Welcome to day 5 of Shadow Work in the Library. Today we are discussing the post that I put up about 52 days without a single second of YouTube self-development and self-help, and how it permanently, or hopefully impermanently, changed my brain, my mindset, and fundamentally killed my ambition. If you're watching this in replay, you can see the timestamps down below. I know it is a basically 1 hour long live stream. People who are joining live are going to start asking me questions in just the next few minutes, but the overall theme for today is that I intentionally stayed off of YouTube self-development and self-help for 52 days, not a single second of watching YouTube videos. If I could show you my watch history on the phone that I'm streaming on, you could go all the way back to the very start of May, and it is just my face and my thumbnails. It's only my videos when I'm responding to comments, and it has been an incredibly educational experience. If you've seen this post, again, you can go to my channel, you'll be able to go to community, and you'll see the post of me with the goat, and be able to see me explain things in tremendously long detail. I mean, quite literally, it is a long post here. Even Mr. Moth is coming out. Oh my god, Mr. Moth just hit the fucking candle. He has died. Wow. That's a bad omen. Mr. Moth has perished at my feet. I'm not sure if you saw that on the replay, but he is here. Nope, he's struggling. He's struggling on the floor. There he is. We're talking about the problems of being addicted to the blue light, and Mr. Moth appears out of nowhere, even though he's burnt one of his antennas off, the silly creature. It is an omen nonetheless. He's been hanging out over in the corner for hours today, and as soon as I started live stream, he decided to fly into the candle. And yeah, I think he's injured, but he's stunned. You can see him, he's like a bit stunned and a bit confused. But hopefully he's okay. He just burnt off half of his antenna, which means that he's not going to have a good sense of direction. So today we've got Mr. Moth, who flies into the flame. I mean, should I tempt him? Should I tempt him over here by the flame? Is he going to make the same? He is going to make the fucking same mistake twice. My god! No way, Mr. Moth. What are you doing? Okay, now he's stuck to the base of the candle. This is a tragic way to start the stream. I didn't think he'd go for it twice. I would have thought he'd learned his lesson and not go straight back into the flame. But maybe this is the theme today. The theme today is that I'm going to talk about the fact that I took 52 days from no YouTube self-development and self-healing. Again, if you're joining live, it's based on this post I just put up today. And to start off the replay, we have Mr. Moth flying straight into the flame over and over again, even though I see in the comment, Mr. Moth got deep self-sabotage. Todd says he will regenerate. Mountain Laurel, welcome, said what's happening? Rennie, good to have you here. If you're joining live, we just had a suicidal moth who is no longer moving. No, he's slightly fluttering. He's slightly fluttering. This has thrown me off, but we'll take it as a metaphor nonetheless. It is good to be with you all. It is good to be finally live on a theme that I've wanted to talk about for about the last 3 weeks, and finally I've gone public that I did indeed do the YouTube challenge for 52 days in total, and then stop the challenge after 52 days because the last 3 weeks in particular have been not very good for my mindset and my mental well-being. Not in terms of absolute despair and apathy and I don't want to live here anymore and I've been weeping myself to sleep every night, but just in terms of being in the habit of being myself. And I've realised a few things that I thought would be a great discussion for the live stream in terms of what it means for your personal journey of self-development and self-healing, what it means for your shadow work and inner work journey in terms of the self-hypnosis, useful mental self-immersion of doing the work, and basically how fragile that is. If you stop, you really stop. If you keep going, you'll really keep going. And then taking questions specifically on the theme of how to basically cultivate a self-healing, self-developing, self-actualizing mindset and protect it from any, basically, takeouts. Any forms of being taken out by either yourself or a lack of being engaged in the world of inner work. I see Brittany saying, contemplating if I should light a candle and pray for him, but maybe lighting a candle for him is a bad idea. Yes, if you're joining live, we had Mr. Moth fly into the flame twice on 2 occasions, and now he is melted. This is an unmonetized video, but he's on his last wings. It's an extremely sad situation. And it's my fault. It's my fault for lighting a candle. So today we have got death being the theme from the very beginning. See a question in chat, just a quick question. What are my thoughts on Keela Shaheen's Shadow Work Journal and Book of Shadow Work? I've never heard of that book in particular. I have nothing to say about the book. One thing that's generally happened, I don't know if this is this person in particular, but the reason I've gone for shadow work as the title for this live stream, the title for my course, and generally it's a good YouTube search term, is that it's a particularly trendy term for the last 5 or 6 years. To be more precise, I'm basically interested in transpersonal psychology, somatic psychology with a theme on bioenergetics, and Jungian psychology overall, which has shadow work as part of that. But really, any self-actualization, self-healing, self-development is fundamentally shadow work in some form or another. If you're buying a book, which is This is the Shadow Work book, and it's a single book, it's going to be fundamentally insufficient no matter what. I know, having produced a 36-book, 9-module structured curriculum inside the Shadow Work library, that that's insufficient. I made the smallest possible version of the work that I could to then create some kind of coaching experience, and I've had students inside of there for a year and a half that still haven't read the 36 books or gotten to the bottom of Shadow Work as an overall theme. So any book that you'd pick off of Amazon or wherever it might be that's like the shadow work this, the shadow work that, they can be fantastic books for those early stages, for like the beginner getting into kind of a more informed place of knowing about your shadow, knowing the basic themes. But at a certain point you have to specialize in transpersonal psychology, somatic psychology, deeper spiritual psychology, and going into a variety of very particular trauma-based modalities. So again, neither a positive nor negative comment on any particular shadow work book out there. It's just the nature of what a single book on shadow work can do, and me knowing that inside out, because again, I made the shadow work library curriculum based on 36 books, which aren't necessarily shadow work, but it encapsulates the whole idea of integrating the unconscious mind and body and working on things from the past which are no longer beneficial. So that's my overall feeling of that. But if you enjoy the book and it was a good book, then fantastic. It just naturally you'll get to a point for anyone who's watching a stream like this where you should stop reading books that have shadow work in the title, because it is just a trendy search term. I'm not afraid to admit it, I'm just playing the YouTube algorithm game of shadow work being the term, because transpersonal psychology is nowhere near as trendy or as clickable as shadow work. The same even for Jungian psychology, or even if you go into somatic psychology. It's just not the term. And inner work is a bit too broad, so shadow work is the best fit myself into some algorithmic niche for the internet, but the reality is it's branding and marketing, so just be aware of that. It's not a thing, necessarily. It is definitely a thing, but it's also inner work in an overall sense. That's my semantic rant about the shadow work industry. Chris, you said that makes sense. Thank you. You're welcome. Enjoy whatever you're reading. Again, I have full love and full respect for any teacher or coach that would write a shadow work book. One of my friends has also written a shadow work book. It's a great thing to be doing, but there are naturally limitations of any particular book. So just be aware that your shadow work begins often with shadow workbooks, but it will end with transpersonal psychology, somatic psychology, and very specific trauma modalities. For example, somatic therapy, bioenergetics, internal family systems, parts work, and subpersonality work overall. Inner child work in a more specific sense, or any of the Gestalt therapy. I could keep listing them over and over again. That's all within the realm of shadow work. If you're joining live, say hello to me in the chat. I can see Sasha's back, Solitaire 43 Music is back. Rinny, you're still here. And TDW says, oh no, Mr. Bill. And Todd's here as well. We are doing questions today as I watch Mr. Moth take his final very sad shuffles across the table in front of me. We are learning the lesson of what happens when you stay too far away from the self-development and self-healing light, when you become too distanced, or like Mr. Moth at the beginning of today's live stream, which you would have seen on the replay, you fly directly into the flame which kills you. You spend too much time over-consuming self-development and self-healing content. What's fundamentally happened to me, and I wrote about this, there's a cheeky comment there, will I be writing a shadow workbook? Unfortunately, I probably will, at some point or another. I won't be doing a shadow workbook, as shadow work being the title, but it's likely the first book that I will produce will effectively be a working summary of the self-integration school curriculum. So in about a year and a half to 2.5 years time, I will have something called a book, which will be a summary of the 104 book, 30 module curriculum that will have taken me 7 years to put together, based off of about 720 psychology books, to give more or less the major quadrants of depth, the quadrants of breadth, the major like lines of development across the board for self-integration psychology as something of an extended bibliography broken down as a literature review as a first book. So I'm doing something like that. Again, it's not the most marketable. It would be so much more profitable for me to make a book that was just packed with exercises, packed with short chapters so that you could dip in and dip out, give a lot of relatable stories and vignettes and client anecdotes and those kinds of things. But fundamentally, I probably won't want to write that book, because at that point I'll be 8 years deep into the process of teaching psychology, and the first book that I write will feel fundamentally insufficient and incomplete. Part of the strange thing about being a teacher in this YouTube, I'm straddling a space, right? I'm straddling the space of YouTube self-development and YouTube self-improvement, which is 15 to 20 minute videos, maybe these live streams going for an hour, but even a single question within the live stream, you've seen if you've been tuning in for the last 5 days, I don't really spend more than 5 to 10 minutes on a particular question. How much can you actually say in 5 to 10 minutes on a deep psychological question? Very, very, very little. If you're writing a book that's 80,000 words to 160,000 words, and you're trying to cover the entire realm of shadow work based off the multitude of unique traumas and unique possibilities of any possible reader, you are going to be fundamentally flawed in your task, which is why the majority of modern books in the self-help and self-development and pop psychology space will be crammed with exercises, rather than what was happening in the 1950s, 1960s, 1970s, and just about until the 1980s, which were longer chapters which were more essay-like, and they'd leave more space for interpretation rather than giving you a more practical workbook style way of doing the work. The market's changed significantly. People get a better immediate experience from a workbook style pop psychology book, but for me as a would-be author in the future, I'm basically betting on the fact that I want to write at least half a dozen books that together in the 2040s, someone could say, oh, I want to read Jordan Thornton. And in the same way that I took all of Alexander Lowen's books that he was writing in the 50s and 60s, someone in the 2040s can say, I want to read Jordan Thornton. And they can buy all of my books, read them all together as a collection of something like, what, let's say 500, 600, 700, 800 pages. That will feel somewhat sufficient to cover the variety of themes that I'd want to, at least an intermediate level of depth. And I'll have to go through the necessary ugly duckling stage of a first book, which is a basic summary of everything, like I basically planned it this way. I've planned it so that if I take this book that's over here at the side, this is Eric Erickson's Life Cycle Completed. It happens to be there because I'm planning a video on death psychology and retirement psychology and something like this. This is very much relevant to people who are in their 70s and 80s. The first book that I write based on business needs will be the kind of book that is literal and obvious, so self-integration psychology or inner work psychology, or this literally the self-integration school, so I can be in my own YouTube video saying, and if you want to read the book on this, I wrote the book Self-Integration Psychology by Jordan Thornton, and you can get it from the link in the description, and it's either completely free because I use it as marketing promo material, or it becomes something which is, you know, just a nice broad introduction to, at that point, hundreds and hundreds of videos across the channel, and you don't have to spend thousands to get involved with the self-integration school curriculum in a literal sense. And it gives people a head start. That by necessity makes sense to be the first book, but my real pleasure as a teacher, in terms of YouTube videos, in terms of client sessions, in terms of the Shadow Work Library seminars, is when I get the opportunity to properly ping back and forth with an individual, or in this case an idea, and go for it for like 45, 50, 60 minutes at the very least. The reason I like mentorship so much, a 4-month mentorship, there's 12 formal sessions in a 4-month mentorship. They're 2-hour sessions, often a little bit longer, but the whole idea is 4 days per week of contact for 4 months in a row with one individual plus me. So I get to really see who that person is and how that problem or series of problems plays out over a multi-month timeline based on the various stresses and relationships in their life. For me to properly be able to apply all of this knowledge that I've partially acquired, let's say 10% of the information in this room has kind of seeped inside of me. If I'm lucky, 10%. That's still 70 books ish. Like 70 books of information. That's about 70 books. There's about 30 to 35 books per shelf. Imagine all of that, like page to page. All of that's inside of me, and it's always inside of me. It's fucking excruciating. It is extremely heavy to carry all of this weight, and I get the feeling of catharsis when I get to apply it to an individual set of problems or aspirations, and then not just the superficial, here's the introduction to the chapter 3, like here's the chapter 3 introduction on complex PTSD, or the chapter 6 introduction on how to reconcile a spiritual emergency. I get to actually write the full chapter, metaphorically speaking, with the client or the student over a multiple month timeline once I've gathered the evidence for how the problem's playing out in their life, and then keep repinging it, keep coaching through the problems as they arise in different forms and formats. That is my actual pleasure. That is my deepest pleasure as a teacher, because it's doing something which only I can do, and that is synthesizing over time in a very applied and practical sense. It's why I love mentorships. It's why I'm probably, until the day I die, going to love deep one-to-one work, realistically with probably like a dozen people per year, realistically fewer as I get older. Currently my max is 20, but it's been 15 or 16 per year for the last 2 years. I really love that, because that's actual deep proper work, and it takes us to the fundamental baseline of the old Greek or Roman way of doing things. In my inner imagination as a teacher, although I'm doing YouTube, and although I do have an audience of nearly 100,000 people, and I'm very, very fortunate, God willing, I'll be able to keep building this and keep growing. There's 124, 125 students in the Shadowwork library. I model myself off of an old school Greek mentor of basically the peak dream is to be like the wise teacher for the future prince or princess, and guiding them to be an incredible ruler of the masses. They learn the moral values, they work through the pains and the traumas, and then they have the courage, the capability, the leadership, the vision and the philosophy to make major decisions which affect a wide variety of people. For some reason, I really thrive in that role. I work very well with high-level, high-power individuals, people who are in charge of companies, people who have built things from scratch, startup owners, or people who are otherwise in high-power positions within another company. If they've got dozens and dozens of employees, or they've got a significant role in the community, I can really work with that person in a way that, in some ways, I'm better suited to working with that kind of high power person than someone who's in a more regular situation with regular levels of responsibility. I'm tilted towards high stakes situations and being good at problem solving for multiple complex situations at once externally and multiple complex situations at once internally, and I also switch on when I talk about it. You've seen me animate over the last few minutes to go from me talking at a basic sense about an introductory level shadow workbook to having the opportunity to really chew on a person's psychology, to really properly get in there and work around from every level to spirit all the way down to the flesh and see what's sick and what's polluted, cut it off in a surgical way, work with them to restructure things. That is my absolute pleasure. So when I start from scratch, YouTube video and by YouTube video, and I go through the introduction, and then I'm preparing in my mind, hey, there's someone that hasn't seen this topic before, I need to at least find a way to include them in the video. It can get a bit arduous at times, but also I can't be so self-indulging that I have a YouTube channel that basically begins midway through an advanced conversation and leads people like too deep too quickly. You have to be aware of balancing the two. And also you have to be aware of practically building a business and having enough money to be able to live off. And I don't know, I could sustain things from just one-to-one mentoring work. And I've been very fortunate to build a business where I've got a high demand and very limited capacity, so I get to be picky and choosy about who I work with. Again, maybe a dozen people per year this year. But with my Shadowwork Library students as well, I really do appreciate, and have appreciated it more as the time's gone on, that from the initial intake in January, and then a few people joining in February, and then a big intake in March, to now be multiple months deep with the students and know more of their personal story, know more of their temperament, know the extent to which they applied the advice, the extent to which they struggled with some of the advice, the extent to which they followed through on a certain behaviour, or they really repressed a certain thing, or they didn't follow through on a certain thing. I become more effective. It's like I hit a snowball effect. And it's quite a special thing as a teacher. Some teachers are very, very good at providing bridging introductory level courses or working with wide groups of people on the same themes over and over again. You can imagine someone who specialized in a child work or early childhood trauma. They are very good at that particular stage of psychology and the particular problems around that, and they can work with thousands and thousands of people. I have learned over the years of nearly 6 years deep into coaching, and then coaching in many different ways at scale with YouTube and Instagram, at a somewhat scaled level with the Shadow Work Library coaching curriculum this year, but also then the 5 years of one-to-one mentorships, that I am fundamentally tilted towards really deep work on a certain individual. And I get to scratch that itch in the Shadow Work Library, but on YouTube it's always a bit of a challenge, and you've seen again over the last few days of live streams, I am at my best when I'm given a question I can really chew into. And it's why I'm basically adopting a new rule inside of myself. Well, I did this a few months ago, behind the scenes moment for you. I adopted a rule with my YouTube content that I will not do videos that realistically don't have a root in the kind of question that a Shadow Work Library student would be wrestling with. So if I can't imagine someone like Rinny, I just saw you come up. Rinny, you're one of the Shadow Work Library students, OG student, there every single week, super engaged. You're here on the live streams. If I couldn't imagine Rinny asking a question similar to what one of the questions that's appeared in a video, for example, I'm not going to make the video on it. Because it's very likely that the people who show up for the Shadow Work Library who are investing money into their personal development, again, it's not bank-breaking amounts, it's $950 to join the Shadow Work Library, you've got a hell of a lot, it's very price effective, but the kind of person who's willing to put money into their shadow work, and the kind of person who's in enough pain or has enough aspiration to really want to wrestle through some of the deeper psychological questions, those types of questions have a different flavor and texture and weight to them compared to more popular questions that work well on YouTube and social media. I've made more of a decisive shift away from that, and I'm going towards more of the heart of what really turns me on as a teacher. In quite a literal sense, it switches me on, gets me going, and I get to feel like I'm actually being me as a useful teacher. For the future, realistically, I'm probably going to focus more on the search terms of, as you guessed it, self-integration, because I'm making the self-integration school, so I want to be in a position where when you search on Google self-integration psychology, you can't escape Jordan Thornton. I want you to search self-integration as a term on YouTube because you heard it somewhere, and you find me. And it's very similar as well for Jungian psychology, transpersonal psychology, shadow work, inner work. There's a variety of ways to play the game, but specifically I think for my longevity into the future, because someone asked, am I going to write a shadow work book or what my books might be on? I need to claim the territory that would be the most intellectually rewarding for me. But it does bring us to today's topic about self-development and self-healing content overall, after my little bit of a rant and a warm-up for the live stream. Anyone who's watching the replay can just have skipped to this part and like, finally he's talking about the thing that the title's all about, which is making the mistake and needing to brainwash myself. Part of what I was doing just then was brainwashing myself. A huge aspect of self-healing and self-development work is telling yourself a meaningful story that you can get behind with faith and conviction. When you've been through pain, when you've been through trauma, you need to tell yourself a story that it can get better, to motivate yourself to continue to do the work, often the very difficult emotional work of making the thing better. If you've broken a finger, for you to snap it back into place and go through the pain, you need to have a story in your mind that by getting it back into the set frame, it will eventually heal and you'll be able to use that finger again. That's a simple analogy. Not only pain, not only trauma. Sasha, exactly, you said a therapeutic narrative. You need a therapeutic narrative. You also need a self-actualization narrative. It is exceptionally classic, Tony Robbins-esque, The Secret, The Power of Now, 4 Agreements, that basic frame, the most base frame of self-development is, if you can see it, you can be it. If you can imagine it, you can get there. The world of attraction, law of attraction, world of affirmation, all of these kinds of things. I have learned the difficult way, my friend, through the last 52 days of not watching any YouTube self-development content, watching nothing. You could go through my watch history and it's just my own videos. After 14 years, I've never taken more than a few days off from some form of health and fitness, some form of business or entrepreneurship, some form of psychology or self-development, some form of spiritual teaching or spiritual practice. 14 years of always being plugged into that. I needed to see what would happen to my psyche if I unplugged myself from that. My initial intention was that if I unplug myself from this, I will basically force the conditions of reflecting for the third reads on the top 104 books for the self-integration school curriculum. And that is exactly what worked out for the first 4 weeks. Those first 4 weeks, and you have to imagine this, if you watch YouTube every day, imagine this, for 4 weeks in a row, to be in those moments where you'd pick up your phone and you'd watch something, or you'd put something on while you're eating. You know, you're about to have lunch, you're about to have dinner, you're eating by yourself, and you're like, okay, I'm going to just watch something on YouTube. To have all those moments where you haven't got something to watch on YouTube really forces you to confront the gaps inside of your own psychology. I just see someone in the chat saying, please like, share, subscribe, it matters, which is interesting. Yeah, I guess please like, share, subscribe to the channel if you want. I don't think I've ever asked people to subscribe to the channel, but this is me breaking the habit of being myself, so now I've just done it. But Miss Honeybee22 is the one that's saying it, not me. Just a strange... I thought you were promoting someone else's channel. I mean, if you're just promoting my channel on my own live stream, that's fantastic, and I appreciate you. What I was saying there is that the first 4 weeks of not using YouTube is something that I'd recommend to everybody. I've fundamentally found a greater connection to the books that I really believe in, which is helping me to truly organize my thinking based on the highest quality material and not just being caught in the cycle of watching the same kinds of information over and over again. The reason I did the challenge in the first place was to clarify my thinking as a teacher for the self-integration school curriculum. It was also because I realized at the very start of the year, I am not learning anything new from this business, from this spirituality, from this fitness content, from this psychology content. Occasionally, if I were to watch 6, 7, 8 hours of YouTube per week, there might be 20 to 30 minutes worth of content where I had a novel idea or something that I could apply or something that would really change the game for me. But you have to recognize that when you've read this many books, especially dated books that go back 120 years, and you've read all the business psychology books over there, and you've got your business up and running, and I'm again 13 years or so, 14 years, probably 14 years into health and fitness and lifting, there's not that many new things to learn. You'd like to imagine that this is the case. You'd like to imagine that after over a decade of being intensely immersed in self-improvement and self-development, you basically get to the point where across the board, you get it. And that happened. That happened probably over a year ago, but then I just wanted to be in the habit of like consuming things, and I enjoyed the entertainment. There are people that I follow who I also am friends with, and I want to stay in touch with them, and there's people who I find inspiring, and just lifestyle content. It's edutainment. I recognize that. It was healing to not be in contact with that for 4 weeks, because I got to understand that the feeling of improving, the feeling of learning something is very distinct from the actual core content, core information, core teaching of something, which is really best presented in books rather than in videos. I recommend books so frequently on the channel as the backbone of the channel, because a 300-page book on a theme goes to much greater depth than a 20 or 30-minute video on a theme. I knew this, so I did the challenge. What I've learned by doing the 52-day challenge is that, as I wrote in that post, it's not the information that matters, it is just the vibe that matters. By not feeding the vibe of asking questions and trying to find good answers, whether that's a healing thing or a self-development thing or an ambition, self-actualization, business improvement, fitness improvement, spiritual strengthening thing, by not being in the habit of asking the questions and inquiring about things that are always going on in day-to-day life, that muscle starts to atrophy. You might say, well, why did it atrophy if you have all these incredible books around you? It's because a book doesn't quite capture the vibe of an interesting man or woman passionately speaking on YouTube about a certain topic. It's the reason that you're here. One of the reasons that you're here for the live stream isn't necessarily because I'm going to give you fantastic information that you couldn't find in one of Carl Jung's books or in a great transpersonal psychology book. You're basically here for the vibe and to have a bit of interaction, and maybe we'll ping to and forth from the comment section. That's fine. That's completely okay. I didn't realize how valuable that was until I didn't have it. The first 4 weeks of being removed from it allowed me to understand I don't need to consume this every day. I don't need to consume this every day. I already have 3 days offline per week. I don't even need to do this like on a weekly basis. But to be in week 5, week 6, week 7 without listening to podcasts, being exposed to men and women who are doing incredible things or have teacherly problems and responsibilities, or even niche things in the gym of like how to optimize my tricep pull down or something like this, even though I didn't need to solve the problem. The tricep pull down is a fantastic example. So the tricep pull down, for anyone who doesn't know, imagine the cable machine at the gym, and you're doing this, you're pulling the cables down. When you get deep into fitness, it's no longer just brace your core, get a nice angle, and then do the tricep pull down. You're looking for micro science-based optimizations of the exact leverage point of the hips, or how to get the exact time under tension, and whether it should be 2 seconds down, 1 second up, whether you should superset it out. And there's all kinds of content, especially in the world of fitness, that, dare I say it, gets super autistic about optimizing every single aspect of fitness, whether it's in a bodybuilding sense or it's in a programming sense. Fitness is a great example for what happens when people get a decade deep and they basically can't just enjoy a basic workout on a basic structure, lifting heavy, lifting consistently, lifting smart. You get really deep into the technicalities. And it felt neurotic to be watching videos that would ask these questions, or to still be thinking about things that I'd solved 7 years ago. But just the process of asking the question and being constantly exposed or somewhat immersed in people who really care about asking these questions was, unknown to me, a deeply motivating experience on a week-by-week basis. Fitness is one example, but it's also the most apparent, and if I'm going to do the most shadow work I can publicly on the internet, it was the most apparent in the world of business. This is where we kind of go into a different moment for the live stream. I've appreciated coming in the chat, so maybe I'll read a bit of the chat before going into the shadow work around self-development and business and making money, because this is where I've learned the most from 52 days of being offline. Painful lessons, very painful lessons. I'm going to bring up the chat now on the screen so I can see what people have been saying. I see in the chat from AVY, now you have a higher ability to appreciate your own as well as others' work on YouTube more than ever. Agreed. Rini says, come to think of it, I never got from a video that dopamine boost I have when I've learned I can do something new or when I see improvement. Sure. I see some great questions in a general sense that I'm not going to answer just today, so I can stay focused on the title of today's video about the 52 days of not using YouTube and self-development overall. Chinmoku says, appreciate you answering questions here and providing a space for new ways of thinking and for speaking with such responsibility. Thank you. Kofoku says, is using ChatGPT for help and mistake in the long term? Yes, it is. You can watch my video on ChatGPT on the main page. If you want to hear my opinions about ChatGPT, I break it down in meticulous and precise detail for about 20 minutes, so I'm not going to talk about it now, but just search Jordan Thornton ChatGPT. You can see all of my latest thoughts on whether or not you should use it for inner work. The short answer is probably not, if you want to do some real inner work. And yeah, Sasha says as well, testing your understanding, I imagine breathing in information and now breathing out. Yes, yeah. So, let's go in to the next topic and take a sip of this water. The title of today's live stream is I made a mistake and now I need to be brainwashed. If you've never seen me speak about this before, this might seem somewhat of a strange topic. It's definitely a shadow topic because it's around money and business and finance, which is something that people often aren't too transparent about, but I've tried to be more or less transparent as much as I can safely. Again, remember, I'm a semi-public figure, so I can't really advertise too much around the specifics of everything to do with my life, but I can safely talk about certain things, especially in regards to money. If you've ever seen one of my pinned comments, you can see that I charge £7,400 for a one-to-one mentorship, because it's 4 months of my life, 4 days per week, and I built these skills over 5 years of constant immersion with different clients. It's comparable to working with a high-level therapist in a major city. in terms of the amount of hours and energy I give. I charge a good amount for generally more well-off clientele, for about a dozen to 20 clients per year, so that I can then support myself in being able to make lots of free YouTube videos and have lots of free time to then be able to message people on Instagram and respond to comments. My own YouTube channel has over 14,000 comments in 3.5 years I've left myself. Imagine that. I don't know what the mathematics works out precisely, but to leave 14,000 comments of just saying thank you, I appreciate you, asking questions, having conversations, that takes hundreds of hours of free work. And the way that I get to give freely the charity of my time, the charity of my energy, actually genuinely caring about the audience that I've built, is by having a business structure where I make enough money to be able to then sustain a certain amount of savings, a certain amount of emergency fund, and a certain amount of lifestyle where I'm comfortable but not excessively luxurious. And I achieved that about 2 years ago. About 2 years ago, I got the basic survival needs and safety needs met. And it was okay. This life coaching thing worked, the teaching thing worked. I'm good. I'm not in poverty line kind of teaching mode. It actually worked, and it was fantastic. That was such a cool moment about 2 years ago. I then built the Shadow Work Library. I started the price of the Shadow Work Library at $750. I then upped the price to $950 a few months back when we added in the group coaching, because there's more value, therefore you have to pay more. And the Shadow Work Library was very popular at the start of the year. I made a lot of money. Well, technically speaking, the business made a lot of money. I didn't take any of the money really out of the business. I found tax optimized ways to keep it within the business or put it into tax optimized pension retirement accounts I can't touch for 30 years. If you're in the UK and you know the tax laws around limited companies, you know that you get very, very, very generous incentives to not personally cash out money in the present term, but basically delay it into the future. And because I've only ever been self-employed, I had no pension. So me kind of going into my 30s and then 40s, I need to find a way to prepare for the bigger future. Practical money management things. You saw me back in February and March promoting the Shadow Work Library non-stop. People were joining the Shadow Work Library. They're paying their entry fees to get involved, and the business account was stacking up. And I had to learn the lessons of managing a greater level of income than I've ever had before. And that was an exceptionally fortunate position to be in. And I primarily shoved it all into the future for my pension, and also built up the cash reserves in business so I can make greater business moves in the future in regards to potentially very exciting updates, which I won't leak publicly just yet because I've yet to fully finalize them. But imagine the money being used to basically give more for free by paying certain people or paying for certain things that then improve the experience that you get from me. I've got these kinds of ideas in mind. That requires money, keep it in the business account. Once I'd learnt the lessons of how to manage a large amount of inflow, because I'd researched all the money psychology, so I've met the survival needs, I built the business to a point where it's more than profitable, and I have excess money that I don't personally need to spend because I don't have a taste for luxury. You basically get to the bottom of most regular money issues, and you enter into the realm of essentially like luxury money psychology. And in terms of self-development and personal development, you have the option to launch off into the world of luxury watches, luxury cars, luxury travel, all of these kinds of things. I've just never cared about that. I've never cared about it. I enjoyed travel. I spent 2 years traveling, volunteering and backpacking, literally going to travel. But in terms of going to restaurants, I've never had a taste to go to restaurants. I don't really care for clothing. I don't care for fancy cars, and also the majority of things that I enjoy, like having free time to read books quietly, privately, and think about things and create and teach and have conversations. They're almost all completely free. I enjoy being in nature. I enjoy training my body. I have very cheap tastes. I do spend a lot of money on organic food and supplementation. I spend far more than most people would on fueling my body, but still, there's a limit for how much you can spend per month on food. Once I reached this point around March, April, I basically reconciled that I've got a full financial strategy for if a certain amount of money comes into the business, I will deal with it in a certain way based on what makes sense for someone who's earning a certain amount of money. But it wasn't a heart-based situation of a deep desire to earn a certain amount of money. And I didn't realize just how absent that is from my base psychology until I took this break from YouTube. And imagine this, imagine 52 days of not watching self-development psychology, not watching anything to do with improving your business, not watching anything to do with like anything about making more money for nearly 2 months. And you spent 14 years kind of at least in contact with that. Really, really great, fantastic. I learned how to build a business. I built a business. I've made money, fantastic. But to then get a return to baseline of not feeding myself very motivated men and women who are talking about money related things, getting the money up. Fundamentally, that's what every single video is about. Whether it's solving a business issue to get more cash flow, whether it's solving a business issue in marketing and social media to get more cash flow, whether it's optimizing something again to get more cash flow, or some kind of investment account. And I've already got my investments all set up. I've got multiple accounts all set up in different ways. The index funds are all set. I know what the particular options are for medium term swing trading. It's all fucking done. There's nothing more to learn. All that you basically have at that point is the hype around it's good to make money, but then people hype themselves up in the it's good to make money based on certain things around what they're going to spend the money on. Because I've done the trauma work on myself, and again, this is a shadow in some ways, there will be things that I'll enjoy in the future that will be more luxurious, but this season in my life focused on the self-integration school and the kinds of relationships I want to build with my students for the next few years. All major spending and saving and investment things that I could realistically do at a certain level of wealth are literally a distraction and a waste of time. And I knew that before, and I didn't realize how much I was ticking over the money making part of me by watching other YouTubers who are interested in business and money making until it was gone. And I basically experienced about 4 weeks ago, I was starting to feel it about 5 weeks ago, but 4 weeks ago, the death of money making motivation in my psychology, because it was never that strong to begin with. 7 years ago, before I even started an Instagram page, I had my friend, one of my best friends, who was begging me, great guy, begging me to see that making money would be a fantastic thing for me to do and all the possibilities. And I said to him back then, I just don't fucking care. It's not the thing, because I'm spiritual to a fault. And I'm not saying you should never make money, but in terms of making lots and lots of money as a motivating force, I've always been way more motivated by personal growth and self-actualization and what I could create as an intellectual, artistic, spiritual force in the world. And that doesn't require the currency of money. Beyond a certain point, that requires the currency of time and focus. So I've primarily optimized my life, for example, with 6 years sobriety, to get my wealth up in regards to time and the quality of my focus. Hence the 720 books I've read in 5.5 years. It's not about money. It's not about money. People who get into midlife and later life have already learnt these lessons, and then they focus on time and they focus on focus and quality of time and focus. I just happen to have done that really early in my life and not have the ancillary taste towards things that money can buy. But of course, this is where things get difficult. My business is set up in such a way that if I make more money, I help more people. Think about that. My business offers in terms of one-to-one work, if I interview a potential client and we work together for 4 months, I make money and I help someone intensely and immersively for 4 months. If I do a live stream and someone feels inspired to join the Shadow Work Library, they click the link in the description, they pay £950 for the next 6 months of group coaching. You've given me about £1,000. You've invested £1,000 in your own personal development. I made more money and I get the opportunity to then be able to talk to you every single week and help you as an individual person. 12 people do that. 50 people do that. God willing, 100 people do that. I make lots of money. I get to help lots of people. It's all fundamentally connected together because I built my business on ethical principles and synergistic principles from the very beginning, and that was very intentional by design. But the difficult part of the not being motivated by making money is that then you don't also get the lift of I get to help more people. And you might say, well, why can't you just want to help lots of people without making more money? It's because I'm basically trapped in my own business model in the best sense possible. This is a fantastic place to be as a business owner. I get hundreds of comments and messages per week. So there are plenty of people that I could help on a one-to-one basis. But the advice I would give someone and the quality of presence I would give someone is not appreciated so much when it's given for free compared to a formal working relationship where they've made the choice inside their mind to do something actively with the information that they've been given. If I get 100 comments and messages of how do I solve this, I appreciate you for this, but how do I do that, and what's this book, and I give everyone a few minutes of time, I give dispersed answers across a wide group of people, but I'm not, call back to the start of the live stream, fundamentally helping more people in the way that I'm uniquely useful for helping more people. You can Google certain books, you can Google my channel for a variety of books on certain topics, but me personally working with someone for multiple months, there's a literal energetic limit, and that's money bound or unmoney bound, it doesn't matter. I can realistically only work with a maximum of 20 people per year for multi-month mentorships, 5 or 6 people at once, whether that was free or my current price of being paid well and being reimbursed my services. There's only a literal amount of time and focus and how much someone can take in terms of the accountability, the homework, the structure, the intensity, the psychological pain that you'll go through during a mentorship. There's only so much that someone can structure across a linear timeline. So I've basically hit the capacity. I hit the capacity in terms of how many people I can deeply touch. I'm moving towards capacity in terms of the shadow work library of how many people realistically I'll be able to stay in contact with. I think it's going to be around 200 people. We're at 125 members currently. God willing, by the end of the year, as more and more people get inspired, we might reach towards 200 members overall. There'll be some money that comes in, which then motivates me and also encourages to give back, and they've then invested in to then get back. And that's the help more money, make more people kind of paradigm, all works together. I'm in a very blessed position. But when you haven't got fundamental money motivation, it's a very weird experience on the inside to then discipline yourself in terms of how you give your time and energy towards immediate need of the person messaging or commenting versus a more conceptually deeper, more long-term meaningful need of building medium to long-term relationships with specific individuals at a much smaller scale, and that has to be within a paid context because of how many people want my time and attention on a week-by-week basis. And that has been a strange place to exist in the last few weeks because I haven't been simultaneously motivated by both at once, and there hasn't been a particular push to reach more people because I've already got 125 people in the shadow work library, and there's already 30 or 40 people waiting in my Instagram inbox for interviews for possible one-to-one mentorships. I opened up a few spaces about a month ago. I had a fully booked client load, fully booked, I had 5 clients, 3 of them finished. I've now got 2 clients. I advertised once on Instagram saying, hey, you can research and message if you want to. People did message. I didn't go into the inbox because I didn't have that feeling of like, the depth of the helping more people and making more money, and it just wasn't synergistically tied enough to then force me into it. The ambition wasn't there. And that's just an honest moment where there's not the deep need either way. Because there's always so many needs, and it's also becoming basically, like if you have 2 people in your inbox, saying, hey, can I have a mentorship? You respond to those 2 people because it's 2 nameable people. If you have 30 or 40 people, it's a crowd that you can't really relate to. It's the same as a massive YouTube audience. When you get hundreds of comments and questions per month, it's difficult to maintain those deep personal relationships, and it's always an ongoing challenge of figuring out where exactly do my personal motivations and my personal skills meet the desires and needs of the people who want time and attention from me. And it's been weird. What I'm trying to do currently is basically hypnotize myself again. This is where the solution is. Ruben says in the chat, does that mean you get more motivated by people's growth and connection over money? Inspiring to hear, gets me curious about what MBTI type you are. Basically, yes. So Ruben, my most satisfying and most fulfilling work, and this is having had, I'm not going to say the literal numbers, very good months in terms of cash flow, felt less motivating than an absolute stellar month of inner work from one particular client. For me to be getting messages when I come back online on Thursday and ending the week powerfully on Sunday with someone having worked on something that they, have been haunted by for 40 years, and they had a breakthrough in a relationship, and there's an actual real emotional feeling of I fucking helped someone deeply, uniquely, at depth through a proper relationship. That's more than just money in the bank. It's always been more than money in the bank. I just kept myself going of it's good to make money and it's good to be doing these things, and it is literally good to be doing these things, and I've still been making money over the last 2.5 months. I've still been signing some clients, I've still been having some shadow work library students coming in, Google's still paying me the pittance that I get from ad revenue, I've still been making money, it's still been ticking over, but I don't have that pushing energy. But I can push when there's certain individuals who are really they're really after it, they're really going after it, they're really in the work, and they need me to help out with that work, and that is why I love one-to-one work in particular. Somewhat of a messy self-admission, but again, there's not that many people in the world who are in my position where you're earning a good wage or a good living from work that is completely in your design, and you then take 52 days off of not watching any YouTube self-development, especially anything around business or money, to then reveal to you, I am basically doing this to help people, and then you're just collapsed on yourself of like, well, how do I help the most people? And you want to know something that's fucking real? This is a fucking real thing. I'm gonna tell you this. I'm gonna tell you this real thing. This is the thing. I'm going to film the self-integration school curriculum, and there's going to be about 330 to 340 videos in that curriculum. The self-integration school will be about £3,000 people to join, because it's like a master's degree. It's going to take people 1.5 to 2 years to work through that material, because there's 104 books. I'm structuring it like a full university-style graduate scheme. It's going to be fucking immense. But because I will only be able to take a certain amount of people into that container per month, a handful of people, I can realistically not imagine doing more than 2 interviews per week, so I want to talk to everyone. 2 2-hour seminars per week, at depth in small groups. Those videos I film for the private students will only get a couple dozen views. So imagine you're me. Imagine you're motivated by help more people, and you're basically making the reconciliation between, I could spend an entire day structuring this lesson, this 30 or 40-minute lesson, for a module in the middle of the curriculum that someone's going to watch in 2027, 2028. A couple dozen people. Or I could take that same time to make a YouTube video that will reach thousands of people today. What helps more people? It's still my time, it's still my energy, it's still my limited life. On a random Tuesday, I can produce one video. I can produce a video specifically for a self-integration school student who's paid to be part of community in a deeply educational experience, or of course I then put it on YouTube, but then the person who's in the proper educational container, they value it a lot more than someone who's scrolling around on YouTube. There's a constant weird tension inside of me of I want to help as many people as possible, but you hit a limit of how much you can help people on YouTube, and it has to be in a structured, relationship-based community and curriculum, which is what I'm betting on. Of course, I get to do both. I obviously get to do both. It's not an either-or choice. But in terms of the months and months of work that it requires, and I've already been putting in, it's a really weird headspace to be in. You have to play with time in a very strange way. And many people would motivate themselves by crunching the numbers of how many students makes a certain amount of money, and they're like, I'm going to get that big payday. But I've had big paydays, and it doesn't do much for me apart from practically padding my pension for 30 years from now. It's a weird problem to have. It reveals my character in quite a flawed sense of the word. It would be exceptionally much easier to be the kind of person who's genuinely motivated by getting a big house and getting a fast car, because I could use that selfish desire for more money to then help more people in paid products and paid services, because it's a fully synergistic business I have. I don't have it in me right now, but what I'm going to try and do is brainwash myself back into business problem solving and try and care about things like email marketing and social media marketing and getting the views up and getting the channel over the 100,000 subscriber mark, but I don't care all that much. I'm going to do it because I love this work, and I love people like yourself who are doing this work seriously, but the analytics and metrics that people chase is, it's not a thing. It's not a thing for me. Quite a rant. Quite a one-sided bit of a rant out there in terms of what I've experienced as a YouTuber who doesn't use YouTube for the last month and a half, but I'm basically turned back towards myself and my original values of what really matters to me in life, and I will try and brainwash myself again to be back in the self-development, grow the business, get the channel going, get more views on the videos, build the curriculum, do the things. I will try and do it. I'll try and maintain it, and I'll do it for the sake of you and the sake of the students and the sake of my clients, but I'm in a weird limbo of not feeling the authentic desire, because also this is another thing that again is weird to admit because you'll get called arrogant for this, but I just have very high self-esteem and very high self-belief because I've healed the majority of my childhood trauma, and I'm just a high self-esteem individual. There isn't that I need to prove it to myself of, can I do this? Will I be the one who can do this kind of energy? The doubt that I'm fighting against, if you've got low self-esteem, you're basically like, oh no, I don't think I'm worth very much, therefore I'm going to prove it to myself. I know that if I continue to wake up and show up in the library, eventually with enough time, even if it's not as quickly as I maybe could have done it, I will build the curriculum. I will keep growing the channel. I will keep signing clients and working with clients. And I'm so much in the habit of being a Jordan and just being good at what I do and also showing up and being responsive to what comes my way that I will just continue to make a great business, continue to help a lot of people. I'm still relatively young. I'm going to do this for decades. There's not a doubt in my mind or in my heart that it will happen in the short to medium term. So if time goes a bit slowly and money and metrics and analytics don't look too flashy for a period of time, it just doesn't destroy me. It's just a thing. It's just a temporary thing about numbers on a screen. The heart is undeniable. So it's a very safe place to be in, but also you become a bit too present oriented. And that's another big problem of not watching self-development content on YouTube, which is very future focused. I basically became too present oriented. I become satisfied and contented to just sit here and sit like kind of meditative to a fault. And then, oh, client's texted me. I will respond to the client. Okay, send a killer voice note and do 15 minutes of problem solving. Okay, that solved the problem, it seems. I'll check in with them tomorrow and then do another client session. Oh, student has a question. I'll just get to that. You get prompted and pinged by the outer world, but there's not like an inner desire that's forcing you forwards. So we're figuring it out. I'm going to try and brainwash myself again with getting back into YouTube self-development and see a few messages in the chat. I see Sasha saying, Jordan, thank you for sharing us. Miss Honeybee says, you have knowing void of doubt. Queen says, Jordan, you're ahead of the collective. Your channel will grow authentically. Once the moment hits, your channel will blow up. I mean, it's already blown up. I mean, I'm extremely fortunate to have almost 100,000 subscribers. I don't expect that this channel realistically will get above. If I continue for another 5 to 10 years, I don't think the kinds of topics that I'll focus in on will get more than 500,000 subscribers in total. I'll be very fortunate to be in the 200,000 to 300,000 range 5 years from now because of the kinds of topics I'm going to focus in on. But I don't need a massive channel. It's not even motivating to imagine getting 1 million subscribers because I know what analytics actually mean, and I'm more interested in the very small band of self-actualizers and self-integrators, which tend to be a very small amount of people who are interested in very niche topics. So thank you, but yeah, I already feel like the channel's blown up proportionally for what it should be. I've seen Miss Honeybee 22 saying gratitude and appreciation to you. I see Flyer saying, yes, watch healthy young kids, great self-esteem, no self-doubt, yes for sure. Todd Johnson says, I'm not sure if you saw it, I'm curious on your thoughts of Wilhelm Reich and his somatic models. They're great, they're fantastic. I've got 2 of Wilhelm Reich's books over there, Alexander Lowen's work on somatics, and topic for another day, but we owe a great debt to Wilhelm Reich and his bioenergetic models. I'm just not going to talk about today because I don't want to. It's not a theme for today, but doesn't mean I don't deeply respect his work. Ruben says, it's an inspiring problem to have, haha. Hope to self-actualize enough to be in a similar position one day. Ruben, you know, that's why it's difficult to say this. Some people have listened to this, whether you're watching live or on replay, of, that must be nice, Jordan. I can't really be completely honest about my feelings as a public teacher with thousands of different people watching me all at once with a variety of very serious problems or very modest problems, but still the money issue. To be having the successful person problems of my dream business making me lots of money and me basically not being that motivated by money, and also then having super high self-esteem that I'm going to be an incredible world changer no matter what. It's like, boo-hoo. What a shame. Oh no, sad violin for Jordan. He's gone through a temporary period of his ambition being low and being demotivated. Boo-hoo. Still made money, still grown the channel, had a few videos that have popped off. We've grown thousands of subscribers. My clients are happy, my students are happy, people are still joining. It's an alienating and isolating experience, which is maybe why one of the things that I have missed by being offline from YouTube, and this is the very, very isolating thing, is that when you get to a certain level of, I've got a public audience, I've got private students, I've got private clients, I've got responsibilities, I've got leadership responsibilities of making a certain amount of money, there are fewer and fewer people who can relate to those issues. So certain men and women out there who've got channels that I watch, when I hear them talking about this kind of problem that they face, I'm like, ah yes, they have similar problems to me. They're similarly isolated on the stage, as it were. It's a really weird situation. But, again, I'm very fortunate to be here. I'm just being honest with you because it's my live stream and I'm trying to keep this as an honest shadow work moment of what happened to me when I didn't watch YouTube. You basically become confronted with your own growth and successful situations. And this is me just trying to be honest about what happens when you become a certain type of man who lives a certain type of life and you get isolated based on your own success. And it's not even like I'm a celebrity because I'm a Z-list public figure. Someone apparently recognized me in public the other day when I was out and about, which was cool. Someone left a comment that they recognized me in a public place, which is cool. It's happened a few times in my life. But I'm basically anonymous, but also very visible. Very weird paradox to be in. You can imagine it if you're not in that position, but really, like, it's weird. It's very weird. So YouTube and my fellow peers who are likewise in similar positions where they've got 50, 100,000, 200,000 subscribers, and I see that the way that their brain talks about things, the way that they feel about things, that creates a sense of companionship. And yeah, that's what I missed, and that's what made me feel lonely, basically, which is why. Today, I watched a YouTube video for the first time in 52 days. One of my current clients has a YouTube channel, and I've yet to fully message them and tell them this, but maybe they're watching, or maybe you're watching on replay, my friend. But you were the first video that I watched because I wanted it to be an intentional moment of all the people I could watch. You are my current client. You have my current heart. You are right there. So I watched their video as the first intentional moment of getting back online because that's what it's all about. A few comments from the chat. Rainy says it sounds isolating. Miss Honeybee says not many people are on the right frequency to even understand this much. Let's receive it. Much thanks. Anir, welcome. You say good morning all. Finally managed to join today, and good on you for sharing your thoughts, friend, candidly. Queen says one more. I would love more people to find your channel because it would help them tremendously. You also said earlier on, yes, I agree. Your channel has blown up close to 100,000. I think you will pass 500,000 subscribers. You're a blessing here on YouTube. Much appreciation and respect. Well, it's in God's timing. It's in God's timing. I am. You can see authentically. The idea of getting 500,000 subscribers is very neutral. It's weird. It's weird. This is. It feels on the inside. I'll give an analogy. It's like when you're in the woods and you're going down a path and there's a left turn and a right turn, and you can see based on the signage before you take the left turn or the right turn, you're on a trail path, that they both fundamentally get to the outcome of the sunset that you're going to see. You can go slightly higher up and around or slightly lower down. It's the same geographic environment. One slightly higher, one slightly lower. In this case, it's 100,000, 500,000. They're basically irrelevant because they still take you to the same destination, which is the beautiful sunset that you went there to see. And in this case, it's the same destination for me of if I help a certain number of people at a certain amount of depth, and that number reflects 100,000 or 500,000, it doesn't spark a thing inside of me. It doesn't spark it. The thing that sparks the most inside of me is the idea of having spent 7 years of my life making a truly unique curriculum that doesn't exist anywhere on planet Earth. Because it won't. It won't. High-level university lecturers who are smarter than me, perhaps, they don't get the opportunity to sit in their private library and film for years and research for years because they have a variety of administrative tasks they need to attend to at the top universities. So people who are literally smarter and more talented than me in one particular area or another, or maybe multiple areas, they don't produce something like what I want to produce, and that seems to be the most motivating thing for my heart, but it also basically feels like a duty at this point. It feels like I've got a moral weight that's always been eating at me from 5.5 years ago before I even started this project. Those moments of speaking with my soul, of basically not having a choice. Like I'm smart enough to work with this level of information. I've got the grit and the work ethic and the variety of life conditions and whatever the appearance of me needs to be to work well on social media. I happen to be, attractive enough, charismatic enough, whatever I am theatrical enough to work as a social media personality, that plus the intellect to organize all this information, it feels like I'm basically burdened with I have to do this because there's only a certain number of people who have the opportunity to be able to make something like the School of Self-Integration curriculum and synthesize 104 books based on 120 years of psychology. That motivates me because it's not outer-driven analytics of like how many pounds I'll make, how many people I'll reach. It's the pure, what I believe to be somewhat duty-bound, somewhat soul-led, I could create something that's never been created before. And that feels like a responsibility because I only get a certain number of years of life, and if I don't make it, it won't exist. And maybe a couple hundred people will go through the experience over the next few years. That would be fantastic. I've made it. But also I've gone through the pre-mourning, pre-grief of the best work I'd ever create is still realistically only going to reach a couple hundred people, in the same way that you could be a fantastic lecturer at a top university and you only have a certain number of students per year who will witness those lectures and those seminars. There's always a give and take, but I also lean towards Greek mentor ideal of small groups in the Stoa. That's what I like. I like that idea. So that's enough of a deep motivation for me, and I will do it, as I've said, and I'm in the process of doing it, and I'm trying to figure it out, and I'm taking in a variety of feedbacks from the Shadow Work Library students about how they like to learn and how I could optimize it, and then making it right the first time, and realistically I'll probably re-record it all in about 5 to 6 years after I've released it, because I'll be an older man, and then I'll want to redo it all over again, so the Self-Integration School will just be version 1, then version 2, then version 3, and maybe version 5 when I'm in my 50s will actually be the one that then is the real thing, and I'm basically in a perpetual one big day of being Jordan. And that's what my life feels like, because I've kind of broken time, as it were. You break the effect of time when you've read this much and encountered this much. You also, I know the chat has been active and I've basically just monologued, but seemingly people are around for the live stream. This is another thing that's weird about being me, which you don't realize until you take a break from YouTube for nearly 2 months. I said to one of my best friends on a call, this is an honest moment. This is a vulnerable moment, dare I say it. I said to one of my friends on a call that it feels like I'm 300 or 400 years old. Because at this stage in my career, although I haven't worked with that many people one-to-one, probably approaching 100 people, because of the way that I've worked with these people, it's very intimate, immersive, high stakes, worst traumas imaginable, most spiritual, profound, mystical experiences imaginable, and everything in between. Imagine what it's like to do a 4-month experience with, let's call it around 100 people over the last 5 years or so, and read 700 psychology books, and also reach nearly 100,000 people on YouTube. The amount of exposure that I've had to humanity, on top of having done a history degree before I did all of this, which is the wider span of thousands of years of human themes, I have gone inside out of the major things that humans are about, which is like the hokey cokey, but that's not what this is all about. This is about the pain that I'm feeling. And the pain that I'm feeling, all jokes aside, is I feel exceptionally old on the inside, because when people are doing mentorships with me, they basically let me into their soul a little bit, and I'm a safe guest who also then takes them to a place that they haven't been before. It's what actually happens. Anyone who's 2 or 3 months into a mentorship or has worked with me before could attest to that feeling that, like, wow, we really did some soul work and we went on a soul journey. And dozens and dozens and dozens of people. A comparable example for most people who aren't professional coaches or therapists is what it's like when you're in a deep committed partnership with someone and you really get to know someone. When you're married to someone, you really understand them. They become something like a part of you, or if you have a child, they become something like a part of you, and you learn, you almost take on their years, take on their experiences because of your close proximity to them. Imagine that with the sheer scale of people that I've contacted at the level of depth and the consistent depth and consistent high charge of working with different people. Plus over 700 psychology books on these themes. And then reading all the retirement books, working with people in their 70s, getting deeply inside those experiences, being a very, very empathic and spiritual being. I don't emphasize this online because I don't lead with me being an empath or me being a sensitive man necessarily. I tend to focus on more practical outcomes, get myself out of the way. But you can't be good at this work if you don't take people into your heart. You have to really get in the space with them. And I've been into so many very inspiring, terrifying, and vulnerable places that I feel like I am hundreds of years old on the inside. Which is strange to admit on the internet. But I think only the people who be watching this live or watching this on replay, this deep into the replay, are probably my kinds of people who would, oh fuck, I could imagine how Jordan would feel that way. It's not me complaining, it's just actually how it experiences, actually how it feels on the inside, because I've in some ways read too much, seen too much, heard too much, gone on too many journeys with people too deeply. So unless you are a professional helper, that might be a bit difficult to relate to. I can see relatable in the chat from Bob, but it's like that. It's like that. It's like how most people, if you imagine being a literal explorer, and imagine being a medieval serf in the 1300s, a relatable example. You were born in a small village in medieval Europe, and you've only ever travelled by foot and occasionally by horse and wagon. If you could then meet someone who had a motorbike, who went around the world, not only the speed of them getting to places, but the sheer volume of places that they've been to, the different environments that they've been to, it's an unrelatable experience compared to them living and dying their life within 25 miles of the place that they were born. You do get to meet deeply that place that you were born, but then again, imagine the person with the motorbike could somehow live eternally, and he could go to these places and spend as much time in those places. The analogy is getting muddy, but I'm trying to give the inner exploration of myself and the inner exploration of clients and then the books that I've read with a literal exploration just to explain the motif. I can see that we're 70 minutes deep on the live stream as well, but maybe we'll go just a little bit deeper because I haven't necessarily answered that many questions today. I've just had one big, long, late-night rant at 11:30 in the evening about some honest work as a shadow work person myself. I'm just chit-chatting with you about my inner torments and lessons, but I'm basically okay. I'm basically neutral. I'm just being honest about things that I generally don't talk about too much publicly because it's not that relevant for the work that I'm doing publicly, because I'm trying to help you solve practical problems around your psychological issues, not Jordan complain about his niche, mostly unrelatable issues, which is a waste of your time in a general sense, but somehow I've broken or slightly fractured the persona of me being who I normally am, and here we are in the live stream. It's fun then. It's fun. No regrets. No regrets. I'm sure it's plenty entertaining for a certain type of weirdo like yourself who's still listening for a live stream like this of Jordan going on and on about this very strange life that he lives. And it's all my fault. It's all my fault and it's all my pleasure. So it's a great gift. I see from the chat. Is the isolating feeling similar to how the dating pool gets smaller the more you heal? You feel better with yourself, but you're more alone. Yeah, more or less. The reason that people experience like the dating market gets smaller and smaller as they go up in consciousness is that they're basically outside of the more regular band of how people exist, which means that it's just harder and harder to find people who occupy those rare states of consciousness. So it's similar enough analogy, a bit different in terms of what I'm talking about, of feeling like I'm hundreds of years old, but more or less the same, yes. It's also difficult when you're a spiritual practitioner because you've been in deep mystical places and deep soulful meditations where you don't identify so much as your ego structure, but you are living through your ego structure, and it's important to have both, but then you've got enough contact with the otherworldly states, and that's not necessarily the most stable footing if you haven't got your feet solidly in the earth, which is why I also take barefoot walks on a more or less daily basis, and I'm quite into weight training just to keep myself weighed in. Yeah. Miss Honeybee says it's hard to find people who match your consciousness and thought process. I agree. Rennie says, I feel like I've been through a few different reincarnations in this lifetime. That's an experience that some people have for sure. Sasha says, imploding to the core. I see it sounds like a very accurate amount of accumulated energy for the knowledge that I'm accessing. Perhaps. I appreciate the chat. Anir says, the feeling of being old sounds logical. A part of you matures every time you expose yourself to a new person. You have grown through others' experiences. Yeah, Anir for sure. it's always been the case that since I was a late teen, people have thought I'm 5 years older than I actually am, and then I've had repeated experiences, especially a few years ago, where people would even guess I'm 10 years older than I am. But at the very least, I've always felt significantly, for better and for worse, more mature than what would be a regular set of experiences. Again, I think something like being sober, like staying sober and being 6 years sober now, but also then primarily reading men and women who were writing in their 40s and 50s and 60s and being conditioned by high quality thought from people who are much older than you from an earlier age, and really staying in that. That's a beautiful, beautiful gift. You refine yourself. But again, it's a weird psychology to be in, so just be careful about how many Carl Jung books you read, just in case you don't want to feel like a 70 or 80-year-old talented but nonetheless very mature, very Senex-like psychological figure. This has been a more or less monologue one-take video. I appreciate that I haven't answered that many questions in this Q&A, but I am brainwashing myself. This is what I'm doing. If you're still watching on the replay or watching live, you can see from the title, it's time to be brainwashed. What I am doing here is brainwashing myself for selfish purposes, which are also selfless purposes, because this allows me to produce more and more content, where basically I get myself into a bit of a talking frenzy. I'm on day 5 of the Livestream challenge. I've forced myself into always being in a digital persona, or at least tapping into this every single day, breaking the habit of going offline, so that I can get into a flywheel effect of just putting out lots of video material and getting the equivalent of these 70 or so books that are in my mind out into the world. Today I haven't necessarily taught too much on particular topics, but I am practicing the skill of just articulating and articulating and articulating. And if you've never done a 75-minute live stream where you just talk and talk and talk and free associate, it's quite difficult. Yeah, it's a skill to learn. It's a skill to learn for sure. Again, many people, when they try and do this, imagine trying to do like an Instagram story. If you try and go for 3 minutes, people struggle. I see it in clients all the time. It's a skill that you build, and it's also a skill that can atrophy if you don't maintain it. So in the same way that I've lost the skill of consuming content, which is an easy enough skill to regain again, just be intentional about going through my subscription feed and catching up on things that I've missed. The skill of producing content is something which is much more important. And I also led with, let's start the live stream challenge last Sunday and get a nice momentum ramp of 4 live streams in a row, and then today being the 5th live stream, before reintroducing consumption. So I led with output before getting back into the input. And I think, fingers crossed, that should help me prevent any unbalanced ways of going back into the future. Flyer asked me a question. Maybe, Flyer, this could be a good question. I appreciate you being patient. Thank you for waiting around. Let's take your question. You mentioned that I built my business on ethical and synergistic principles. Could you expand on what those principles are and how you built it, please? Also, the spiritual principles. Specifically, I feel that building a business that way would remove blocks for me and lots of people I know, especially healers and artists who have a lot of projections around business and money. Okay, I can do that. I can do that. Queen also appreciates, we love getting to know this part of you, Jordan. Thank you. Thank you, Queen. I'm going to answer Flyer's question about how to build a business on ethical and synergistic principles. This will mainly apply in the context of being an online educator, a YouTube content creator, someone who's doing their own business with social media marketing being something which is important. I mentioned earlier in the live stream my relationship to money. There are a wide variety of things that are not the normal practice within self-healing and coaching as an overall thing. So for example, I basically went through all the business books to know what the basic models are of being an online teacher, an online coach, and then decided for myself based on my spiritual values, which are more morally led in terms of transparency, integrity, karmic consequences. That's a big thing that I consider. I consider from the very beginning, what would it be like to build a business I have to live inside? What would it be like to build a business that then is etched upon my soul? And that was the business I ran. That's how I choose to spend my time. That's the impact that I made on the world. I asked myself all these questions in the beginning. And fundamentally, as I have built over the last 3.5 years on YouTube in particular, I knew that no matter what I did, whether I made mistakes, whether I said things which were embarrassing or even harmful,
God forbid, but occasionally I'll say things where they won't quite come out the right way, or certain people won't be the right audience for a message, and things just didn't work. I considered all these things from the beginning, and I made the bet that if I basically give as much as I possibly can for free, that I believe to be true based on personal experience and professionally validated, researched material, I probably won't go wrong, and I'll probably be supported in having enough money come my way and being able to charge more and more money the better I get. From the very beginning, I didn't rush in with I need to make lots of money to get my fill. From the beginning, I rushed in with how can I give as much high quality information as I possibly can for free, and then people who are really committed to the work are naturally going to be encouraged to want to spend a bit of money with me and form a relationship with me. Proof in the point, my first proper video series on YouTube was a 52 episode, 52 book series where I basically structured a free mini course I published publicly over about a 6-month period, rather than it being something which I could have charged hundreds of pounds for. Many people, if they make a 52 episode series, would turn it into a mini course and charge hundreds of pounds for it. They'd start by charging money because they want to get their fill. What I did is I lived exceptionally lean and didn't have very much money, in fact a very worryingly low amount of money at a certain period of time, to just keep giving, to build my competence and then build that trust basically with an audience. When you ask a question about what are the synergistic principles I operate from, I think that money should be something which is as transparent as possible. I've never liked the idea of getting on a sales call and then I've hyped someone up with sales, like sales psychology, and then I reveal the price to them and then do any form of manipulation around you should really do this because here you are in the moment, and basically like time pressured selling tactics on the call with someone when they've just found out the price for the first time. From the very beginning, I've always been exceptionally upfront and check in with my potential clients multiple times before we even get on a formal call. Hey, you do know that it's this much, and you get all of this in specific detail, and I just want to confirm that you can indeed afford this, either upfront or with a payment plan, before we even start to build the excitement, and more importantly, before we start to go into sensitive topics and you get your hopes up about me being someone that can help you with trauma. It's something really important ethically to me. Something that often, unfortunately, is a necessity when you're in business, is that you get people into a certain emotional state where they're going to buy. And then they buy. But, of course, if you're dealing with trauma and sensitive material, you don't want someone to get their hopes up basically from a desperation state and then hit them with a price that's outside of their regular budget. It's kind of a stretch for them. But they feel like they've got no other option because you got them and you understood them, and there's that dark energy attached of basically they were pressured not in a good way to do it. So I don't even allow people to get deep into conversation with me about the particular things that they've been through until I've confirmed that they could afford my services, because otherwise I'm potentially running the risk of them getting their hopes up for no good reason. Things like this really operate behind the scenes for me. I've made several posts. In fact, I made a post last week about my relationship with money. If I receive from you, you gave me £100. If you give me £100, you know what, I'm actually going to make it more specific. The Shadowwork Library right now is £950. I get a few people buying the Shadowwork Library every month at this stage. We had a big sales spike at the start of the year because it was the opening of the community, and now a couple people per month give me £950. If you were to give me £950, I feel the ethical weight of I better not fucking dishonour the money that you've given me by wasting it on something that you wouldn't approve of. That's not from a shameful place. It's just the karmic connection of money itself. Clean money given to me to invest in your personal development and your shadow work process shouldn't be dirtied by me making low quality choices with that money. If I were to use that money to weaken my well-being, or to hurt someone else, or to otherwise be extremely frivolous beyond a healthy level of like obviously have a bit of fun, have some money, like I still have a frivolous fund, I still allow myself to spend a couple £100 per month on things that aren't necessary and essential and just a bit of fun, I still do that. But if the majority of my money is going towards silly or degrading things, I have literally tarnished the quality of the money that you gave me while investing in yourself. Many people would say, it doesn't matter. You're giving them the product and service, you're still giving them a fantastic curriculum that they're going to spend a year going through, you're still coaching them every single week, you're still basically undercharging for the amount of value that you give. What is there to worry about? What's to worry about is the behind the scenes spiritual consequences of taking clean energy that was given you and you being the one who made it dirty because you didn't make conscious choices about the gift that you were being given of being supported by someone's financial means. I'm unfortunately very aware of all of these things all of the time. Thankfully, they work in my favor mostly, and I've been fortunate to build a business that sustains me, and more than that, because I think I am aware of these things. People can get a sense that, of all the people out there, maybe I'd want to give Jordan, maybe I'd want to give Jordan the money because he seems like he's more ethically integrous rather than this other life coach who seems to just be spending it on fast cars and pretty girls at clubs or something. Maybe you get a sense that I'm not that kind of person. I struggle to do things with money, but that's up to you. I'm not doing it for the appearance's sake. I'm doing it for the sake of I literally wouldn't be able to sleep with myself knowing that I've tarnished the energy that was given to me. The same principle applies also towards the attention span. If you saw my Instagram story about 2 weeks ago on the weekend, YouTube sent me an email saying that last month, I think at this stage it'd be May. In May, my channel consumed just over 1 million minutes of human consciousness. Across the channel, all the videos I have there currently, based on the watch time of people finding older videos and newer videos, 1 million minutes of human consciousness was consumed that month based on my videos. I feel the fucking weight of that constantly. Imagine what it's like to know the work that you've put out there, people consuming a digital representation of you speaking last week or a year ago. You are consuming minutes of the most valuable resource on planet Earth, human time, human focus, and human attention. I'm so aware when I'm talking, and even today when I've been a bit more monologue-y, I'm still filtering the things that I'm sharing to then be useful for a certain type of live stream viewer who could relate to these things. I'm so aware of the karmic consequences of what happens back and forth. So, just there are a few points on Flyer. How do I build a synergistic business? I'm painfully aware of the karmic consequences of making misaligned choices. Not the once, not the twice, not the 3 times, but what happens if you build something over 5 years and you get off track. If you've ever seen life coaches, gurus, teachers, anyone who's a public figure make misaligned choices energetically for too many months and years in a row, they become someone who's a sicker version of who they could have been because they didn't manage the responsibility of leadership correctly, and that has energetic costs in this life and, from my metaphysics, also in the next life. So I'm aware of it. It's very heavy, and it's not like get my money up kind of concerns, but again, I can actually be motivated by the concerns of not making spiritually wrong choices about how I run my business rather than doubling my cash flow, because that's not the priority. I'm interested in the quality of the energy and the quality of the focus. You get the idea. You get my predicament as a neurotic man. That's also the spiritualization of business. That's treating everything as an intentional act, for better and for worse. It's been a wonderful 90-minute live stream. I'm enjoying this. I'm enjoying speaking, going longer than I expected. I didn't necessarily make the pledge to myself to just go for an hour, but Flyer says, really resonant answer and discussion, Jordan. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate you. Are there any questions for me on the theme of self-development, self-healing, and an overall, like, shadow work, mindset, mentality, these kinds of things, or any experiences that people would want to share? We've got 50 people watching live. If you're watching on the replay, of course, you can skip around on the timestamps, but I'm here still in the real moment. I see from the chat, will the library be open in 2026? The Shadow Work Library will not be open in 2026. It is a time-limited experience. You need to click the link in the description and join the Shadow Work Library sooner rather than later if you want to get access to me as cheaply as you can get access to me now, because in the future I will shrink the size of the group and go deeper with a smaller number of people, which means I need to raise the price so then I can justify that smaller group of people. I would rather work with one client at £3,000 that they gave me than 3 at 1,000, roughly speaking, because I can go deeper with that person. If there's 15 people that show up to a seminar, 2 hours per seminar, twice per week, every single week for months in a row, I know that I'm better suited at giving them a much deeper, richer experience if it's a smaller group and I get more one-on-one time with them. But then I need a higher price point to then compensate for the fact that there's fewer students overall. The Shadow Work Library this year is me basically seeing how how much work I can do and how much deep focus support I can give a larger group of people at a more accessible price point, again, under £1,000 for active group coaching. But realistically, this will be the only year in my career where I will do this. I knew that it would be a 1-year thing. I thought it might be possible that I'd learn some lessons about ways to work with groups at more accessible price points and do bigger classrooms, and that would be something for me, but it's just not my thing. I think I can handle about 200 students in the Shadow Work Library this year. We're at 125. I think 200 would be fine. I could add some extra seminars in. I can stay in contact about 200. It's slightly over Dunbar's number of the amount of people you can keep track of. And again, a certain number of people will join and don't stay active in the community. So it's not actually 200. It might be lower towards about 100, 130 people because people join and they don't make advantage of the fact that I could build a relationship with them. Trying to work with Dunbar's number, Robert Dunbar, who had a number of around 110 to 130 people. I know I have the capacity for that. But that's going to be a 1-year thing. It ends on December the 28th, but there are weekend calls every single weekend, and I'm available in that Circle private community that if you ask me a question, I will voice note you back when I'm back online, and we can accelerate a lot of work. Like working with a literal therapist or a teacher or a private coach for 6 months, that's what I'll offer. But it's only for this year. What I'll then do, this is if you're watching a live stream like this deep into the replay, you must be a core member of the audience, so maybe this is interesting for you. My strategy then is I'm going to do the Shadow Work Library all the way to the end of the year. I'm going to do early exclusive access intake and admission for the self-integration school in around November, December time. And then when people are coming in November, December time, I will then do an intermission of January of not teaching, and then we're going to have a very, very fucking special time in the self-integration school. I'm going to give that small group of Shadow Work Library students who wants to go deeper into the self-integration school essentially a really fucking cool experience for about 2 months, 2.5 months, from February to April until the public launch. So my birthday is in April. I'll do the public launch of the self-integration school in April, but I'm going to do about a 2-month period of the most dedicated or further going Shadow Work Library students in a really small group of people, really intense work that's going to be as close as I can possibly get to a one-to-one mentorship, and do a really intense period. And I'm really looking forward to that. I'm going to hopefully have the majority of the curriculum filmed by then, but even if I had 22 of the 30 modules finished, that's still a 1.5 years worth of work if you can read about a book or two every month. Most people need a month for a module of mine. Shadow Work Library students who are here, there's 9 modules. Most people haven't gotten any further than 3 or 4 modules deep so far, even if they've been in the course for 5 months, because they are dense books that I'm recommending. It takes time to read a 300-page psychology book for most people who aren't intensively being focused in. So again, a 30-module curriculum, if you did all 30 of the modules, and you read all 104 of the books, and you maintained a constant pace of 2 books per week, that would take you a year. Most people aren't going to do that when they've got adult responsibilities. So the Shadow Work Library is a more accessible, lower barrier to entry kind of situation that you can join and take advantage of in the next 6 months. And then after that, I will never again have an accessible offer, which is less intense, more forgiving, less required of you. I will basically just anchor myself at this is graduate level work. Show up for intensity. I expect you to be reading no matter what for an hour per day. Basically 2 hours per day being the minimum I'd expect, but you only need to commit to 3 months of coaching up front. So someone could realistically get lifetime access to the curriculum, do 3 intense months of non-stop work, and then take a break 3 months, and then get another package of 3 months of coaching, and kind of taper their own learning journey based on an intense arc, and then a resting arc, and then an intense arc, and not need to pay constantly, because it's unsustainable. Unless you're someone who's very, very special in terms of your intensity, it's very unsustainable to do a year's worth of reading 2 books per week. I enjoy it. Some of the clients that I worked with have enjoyed it. I see people in this chat who are likewise at a very intense reading rate, but most people can't. But I will be fundamentally sad as a teacher if I don't build the future of my career around the intensity which comes naturally to me, and basically calling up all of my students to that standard for this intense self-hypnosis, group reinforced, community bolstered, let's all fucking do it kind of energy. That's what I'm doing. So the self-integration school, public admissions, April 2026. If you want to get involved in that kind of covert, super secret, intensive, tiny group OG beta testers in the February and March 2026, then you have to join the Shadow Work Library this year. You have to be attending the seminars over the next few months, because I'm not going to let someone who... people will game this. Someone will join in November and be like, I joined the Shadow Work Library so I can get in on the self-integration school early, and I'm not going to let them do that. I don't care if they want to give in the money. They haven't earned their part in that group. You need to have shown up to the seminars and been a community member, and I need to have seen that you're reading the books, not just you can throw $3,000 at me. For the self-integration school, I'm not even going to have a public checkout page. This is going back to Flyer's question from earlier on, my ethical principles in business. I would rather make a fraction of the money and not have a public checkout page, so that I can personally talk to each of those people in a proper interview for 30 to 40 minutes to know that they would be a good fit for the school before I take their money. Because I've had the experience, unfortunately, where a dozen or more people have joined the Shadow Work Library, they paid the money, didn't show up at the seminars, haven't read the books, and although the money may not have been that much for me, I emotionally don't feel great about accepting money for services I didn't deliver. I know it's on them. I know it's their responsibility. But, fundamentally, I want to give back for the money that people have given me. And I want to know that the money people are giving me is being rewarded in terms of I'm giving them back a hell of a lot of value. So I'm going to personally interview every single person. There's no public checkout page. If the interview went well in November or December, or public intake in April, I'll then basically say, here's the checkout page. You can sort this out within the next 48 hours and I'll see you on the Sunday seminar. That's how I want to run a business. I'd rather take in 1 or 2 people per week and just keep it sustainable and keep it intense, keep it intentional, than do massive sales cycles and things like this. That is the plan, Flyer. Going back to your question of how to run an energetic business, an energetically aligned business, but then also the question about, is the Shadow Work Library only for this year? Yes, it is only for this year. You've got 6 more months of active group coaching available, and you'll also get lifetime access to the curriculum, which will take you over a year to work through. So you get the best of both worlds. You'll never be able to work with me this cheaply. It's literally, time is ticking. Every single Sunday, you lose access to a seminar, but there's another 27 seminars coming up if you join this week. So link in the description if you want to get involved, or you can message me on Instagram and I will start a literal conversation with you, and we can send some voice notes back and forth if you have any doubts or hesitations, or you just want to poke around a bit before you make the purchase for whatever reason. I'm also okay with that. $1,000 is still a fair amount of money for most people, so I appreciate you want to build a relationship. That is up to you. We're just about coming to the end of this live stream. I appreciate that people have been dropping things in the chat, and Miss Honeybee is saying, please like, share, subscribe, it matters. Fantastic. I've got a promo fan inside the chat saying these kinds of things. I appreciate you. Fun. A says the school will be fantastic, I'm sure. Flyer says, this discussion of the energetics and ethics of money is so interesting. It ties into manifestation ideas, but much deeper and not self-centered. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate you. Yes, I went deeper on this theme because, Flyer, you literally asked me to talk about the theme of energetics around money and business, and I'm happy to share as transparently as I can. I think about things somewhat differently in terms of how most people think about building a business, because I care about different outcomes. I care about the quality of my soul. I care about whether or not I can live with my own choices at the end of my life. I care about whether or not I did the right thing on a day-by-day basis, and no amount of purchasing decisions is gonna cover that up. So from the very beginning and all the way through, this, for better and for worse, to repeat myself again, is how I actually live on the inside. So it's all been built, it's all been done. I think there's one kind of question. You asked a question from A. Your title made me led to the topic of despair. Is there a dichotomy of people's responses to despair you can speak about? Remedy seekers versus avoidance as an example. I appreciate the question, but I don't fully understand it in a way that I'd be able to articulate quickly, and it's not necessarily on the themes that we've opened up today, so we might have to save that one for tomorrow, and maybe if you're in the live stream tomorrow, you could give me more context or word that in a bit of a different way so I could then dive into it in great detail. But we're 100 minutes deep into this live stream. Candle is almost going off the screen, and if you've been here the whole time, you saw from minute 1, minute 2, when the moth flew into the flame. At the very start of the stream, we were burnt by the light of possibility, and here I am admitting on the day when I put up a YouTube post about now going back into YouTube and re-hypnotizing myself in the world of self-development and self-healing. I just want to remind you that your mindset and your therapeutic narrative, your personal self-actualization narrative of what you're building with your life, the kind of man or woman that you're trying to become, the kind of relationships that you want to build, the quality of relationships that you expect, so much of it is all a story. It's all stories. It's all stories. And the best stories want to be repeated, which is why you repeat them in your mind. Old trauma narratives and old baggages and old conditioning, old identity structures, they are stories that unfortunately are playing on loop and should be changed. But the healthy stories for your future, they are precious. I can say with confidence that if you're in the habit of watching great YouTubers and listening to great podcasts of people that you find inspiring, take a break for 7 or 14 days, maybe even as long as a month. But don't do what I did, which is take too long away from people who are inspiring you. Because otherwise you get a little bit weakened in terms of your own self-reinforcement of a narrative that feels more immediate and more bound to more earthly or material goals. If you have a spiritual bias, I'll put it this way. If you have a spiritual bias and you're a spiritually oriented person who really likes going into the soulful realms, you need constant reinforcement that it's worth paying attention to material goals, material ends, and practical things in the present moment. Otherwise, time gets a bit too diffused. You become a bit too spiritually detached. And I went there. I've been there for the last 3 weeks, and I'm trying to bring myself back in onto the earthly plane, as dramatic or grandiose as that might sound. That's been my actual experience. I've tried to articulate it today in this live stream from a variety of different angles. Even me just speaking to the theme of business building, speaking to the theme of what I want to build, speaking to how I try and help people, that reinforces my reality as someone who's in the here and now with the beautiful comments coming in. Fantastic. I mean, quite genuinely. I'm seeing some great comments here. Deep gratitude for the sharing of your time and energy. Starting my morning, and this is touching the heart. Stories matter. Love this. I agree, Jen. A says thank you. Katarzina says thank you. Sasha, back in the chat. Jordan, great delivery today of your essence. Thank you. Flyer says, really appreciate this. Thanks, Jordan and everyone. Chris, good to see you here again. You said, let's make t-shirts saying, I swapped YouTube University for the Shadow Work Library. Chris, you would say that. You're one of the top Shadow Work Library students. You can't get enough of the Shadow Work Library. You're clocking into the Shadow Work Library when you're meant to be on shift at work. I see you in the seminars. You're going to say this kind of thing. But yes, my students show up here. You've seen it on the last 5 days of live streams. Every single live stream, I get half a dozen or so Shadow Work Library students who still, strangely, aren't sick of hearing me speak, and they want to show up evening after evening to hang out here on the live stream, even though I will see them on Sunday and start real discussions with them. So if you want to be one of the Shadow Work Library students and you like me as a person and you think I'm a good enough man with good enough ideas and I can maybe be useful for you, you could maybe give me the privilege of unlocking the sheer quantity of knowledge and information I have and putting all of this intensity into a fucking useful place, your heart, your story, your desire to have a better narrative for the future and fix the fucked up thing from the past. I would love to do that, but I can only really do it in the Shadow Work Library because right now it's a parasocial relationship where there's a comment section rather than you me going back and forth on a live call. So, choice is up to you. If you've been inspired from these live streams, I will see you in the Shadow Work Library. Otherwise, I will be back tomorrow for the 6th of the 7 live streams in a row, and we will be talking about other themes at another time. That moth came pretty close towards the flame. We're going to end this live stream before a second moth goes into the flame. See a few more people in chat. Hamish says, thank you, Jordan. Love me some of your words. Jinmoku says, thank you, Jordan. Book and candle emoji. And here's a goat. I appreciate the goat emoji. Anir as well, another Shadow Work Library student, saying, thanks, Jordan. Much food for thought. Talk soon. Miss Honeybee is saying, please leave a link for your one-on-one class. Miss Honeybee, the link for my one-on-one work is right there in the description, the Shadow Work Library, or you can go to the Self-Integration School website, selfintegrationschool.com. Click on the Shadow Work Library and you will see the sales page or the description, or just message me on Instagram at Thornton Theory, and I respond to people personally, which is also my preference. That is all for today. My friends, These live streams keep getting longer and longer. The momentum is building. We went from a 1 hour limit to an hour and a half to now being slightly over an hour and a half. And I'm not sure how long tomorrow will go, but I'm in the flow and I appreciate you all. Specifically, once again, I will remind you, be careful of the stories that you tell yourself. And if you're currently in a story where you're believing in better and you're hoping more for yourself, your family, the people that you care about, defend that story and keep adding to it. Because the baseline of collective consciousness or the spiritual journey that you might be able to go on might get a hold of you if you don't keep reinforcing that narrative. It's a self-delusional, brainwashing trance. It's neither positive nor negative, but you can make it very positive, and fundamentally, if you're not telling your own story, someone else will tell a story for you, or, more worryingly, you'll lose an interest in stories altogether, because you've heard enough stories from enough people all at once across time. And that might be more of a me issue, but never know who's watching a live stream like this. I see Jen saying the flame is out, but I'm on fire. I appreciate you, Jen, but nonetheless, live stream's over for now. I'll see you tomorrow. Be well, my friend.